Janine Labella here. I am the CEO of Labella Planners. We are back in action with Behind the Bouquet, and I am very thankful and for our gracious host, Carrie Galloway, managing partner of YorkBridge Wealth Partners.
Yeah.
YorkBridge Wealth Partners. Carrie and I go back a couple of years. She is an incredible financial advisor as well as a mentor type. She owns this company and has built it. It's so exciting to watch, and I'm proud of you. And it's like I love watching everything that's going on. As someone who is not the best with money, we should probably have more conversations, but we will get
can
there.
Do that later.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I think this episode of Behind the Bouquet should serve as knowledge of people wondering, how do you save up that much money for a wedding if you're paying for it by yourself? What do you do with the money after, the gifts come in? Hopefully there are gifts. And just how to be smart about it and not go crazy, but because that's, you have to enjoy yourself. And once you go crazy and overspend, that's when your nerves set in and things start to not go right.
Yeah, and there's regret, which
Exactly.
is what we want to avoid.
Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah.
And no matter how much money you're spending on your wedding, whether it's $20,000 or $200,000, it's a lot of money for
Absolutely.
a 4-hour or a 5-hour wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd love for you to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background.
Okay, sure. So, hi everybody, I'm Carrie Galloway, and as Janine said, I'm one of the managing partners at YorkBridge Wealth Partners. So I do have 2 other partners, but I'm the one female financial advisor and principal at the firm. So we're really proud. I'm proud of that and what we've done over the last few years. I've been a financial advisor for about 15 years in the financial industry, though, my entire career. So I definitely have seen different trends in the industry and have lived through different market cycles and helped a lot of people in different phases of their life, from saving right out of college to people who then are dealing with children who need to save for college, to then people who are entering retirement and then even in the retirement phase. So there's lots of different aspects, but certainly we can talk about everything you said with
There's different pockets.
Exactly.
Everything has its own pocket.
Exactly. Different buckets that we put them in. So, but yeah. So I think, do you want me to start sort of answering any of the questions, or?
So I think my clients, they just got engaged and they call me and they give me a budget. Let's work with a nice number, $100,000, which in New York is pretty standard. That's like the going rate for, you have 200 people at a wedding, $100,000 at a venue, and blah, blah, blah. So that number's a little scary.
Yep.
How do you get to that number? You put your acorns away in one basket. If you don't have any help, can you get there in 2 years,
So it's a great question, and I think it all starts really with a conversation. And so I think what's really important, sort of to take a step back, is to make sure that if 2 people are getting married, that both of the partners are in that conversation and understand then what it's going to take to get to $100,000 and what that type of wedding looks like. And the communication is really, really important, because it sets up a foundation that the marriage is actually going to be somewhat based upon. So if and so the example I like to think about is, it might be one partner might really want, this, I don't even know now if $100,000 is particularly elaborate, but let's say that, I'm assuming it's somewhat,
you can have a nice wedding.
Okay, so it's a nice wedding. But if the other partner isn't on board to spend that much and to save, as much as it's needed, then you're going to have a hard time getting there. Because to save $100,000 over 2 years is going to be over $4,000 a month you have to save, which is a lot of money. So for most people, obviously it depends on what your income level is. For some people, that is going to be doable. For other people, that's not going to be doable, saving in 2 years. Other people, it may be doable if it's in combination with getting help from parents, or even now with there's, sort of people will set up, it's not a GoFundMe, but similar things.
That's like a
where-
bridal shower, like
Instead of donating, let's say, giving dishes, they'll say,
Yeah.
would you contribute to our honeymoon?
Right.
So I think there's other more creative ways that people can do some savings, but you definitely have to have a plan, and really, again, it starts with that conversation.
Right. And I think one of the things I've learned through my whole, like, owning this business, the primarily wedding focused business, is you can't have a wedding to expect to make money.
Right, because you don't know what's going to happen in the end. So
Right.
you can't then count on that. So
Yeah.
as much as people are going to get some type of gifts, but could it be $5,000? Yes.
Yeah.
But could it be more? Yes. But you can't count that you're going to get, I agree, $50,000 or something. And I think the other tricky piece is, a lot of people will look at using credit cards, which can be then a very slippery slope, because there's always the game of having credit cards with 0% interest and shuffling balances around. But if you miss a payment, or you aren't able to then get another credit card and go to another 0% balance, you again can create a huge amount of debt then that you have to pay off. So it's really important to have a plan from the beginning and figure out, and really sit down like with pen and paper and map out like how are we going to save for, what we want. And sometimes then it comes down to prioritizing too, because you want to think about, yes, the wedding, and that's a beautiful day, but then you don't want to be stuck then with a situation that's going to really set you back for 3, 5, 10 years down the road, where then you can't do other things in the future.
Exactly. And obviously part of my job is to create a budget with, more specifically my full service clients, and to really see where their numbers will fall in as like an estimate. So if someone comes with $100,000, I have a pretty good idea where things are going to fall. And I think part of my job is educating clients as to how much like quality vendors really cost.
Okay.
Because a band is $12,000 to $15,000, and that's not even the highest end band. Like they go up to $50,000. Wedding stationery, which is the first piece of paper that people receive. Like if you go to a stationery, you're going to spend between $3,000 and $5,000 for a beautiful invitation. For 200 guests. And so I think a lot of the shock and awe, I want to say, is people don't understand, or they think they should be cheaper when people put a lot of work into this. So it's me educating my clients as well.
Yeah,
as I'm sure you have to do.
Yeah, but you're right. It's really important though to do that, and then people can pick and choose what they want to prioritize on.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right, that there's, what I think it's easier too when you're saving for people to actually create like more bank accounts, so then they can actually, like a lot of people just have one account and they'll, just put everything in it. And especially now if, people are coming into getting married, and usually most people nowadays have been working, so they probably have their own bank accounts. But I think right when you get engaged is the perfect time to open up one joint checking and savings account, and then start joint savings. So that's where you're going to create then this clarity of what you want to save towards. And then you can even say, I think what works even better too is to say, like, here's the account for honeymoon, here's an account for even the band, here's an account for invitations. And it may seem like a lot of work, but then you can actually, it helps prioritize and see, like, here's where the money goes. Because if you only, let's say you have $1,000 you can save every month, like how are we going to divide that up? And when you start to break it down then by each of the items that you need to save for, it can help then either say like, okay, we'll be able to get there, or we aren't going to be able to get there, so we have to pick and choose. Like where do we want to prioritize flowers or the venue? And
that's a really good idea, because because for someone like me, I would all of a sudden see like 50 grand in my bank account and I'd be like, woo, it's time to like, I don't know, go shop, go on a trip or something.
Right.
So that's genius, Carrie. Like, so if you separate it out, and can you just open as many savings accounts with your bank as possible?
That's where it gets a little bit tricky because some of the banks will charge fees for having certain accounts. So you do have to definitely ask, and sometimes there's minimums. So that's the only obstacle. So you have to really see, like smaller banks usually are a little bit more flexible. Like some of the credit unions are more flexible, and usually they'll allow you to do savings accounts, but maybe not checking accounts. And now there's a lot of options even online. So a lot of the online banks will also let you open up savings accounts. You are only allowed to transfer money out, like usually online, like it's gotta be an ACH transfer. They won't necessarily give you checks, but there's, it takes a little bit of homework, but you can do it. So there's like Ally Bank online, Discover Bank online, like those are two of the big ones that a lot of our clients will use. Even like Schwab and Fidelity will let you usually open up accounts without having to pay anything. And you can move money via ACH transfers. So from a checking account.
That's good.
So so I think that's the biggest thing that can be really helpful.
Okay, so now for like a bad question. So let's say we've blown our budget here.
Okay.
What would an approach that you have to help clients like get into a healthy space and recover?
Yeah, so it's gonna be very similar to you have to then create a plan to figure out how you're going to get out of then if it's, let's say it's debt, like you've used credit cards, and you have to just take the balance. Like if it's $10,000 and say first you can't just pay the minimum balance, because if you just pay the minimum, you're never going to pay any of it down, because the interest rates are so high on credit cards that paying the minimum is never going to get you like ahead. And with interest rates, that can be in the teens. The minimum's never going to chip away at it enough. So you have to start paying down more. And
so suck it up and make a bigger payment.
Make the bigger payments, and figure out how long it's going to take you. So if it's $10,000, and the more you can pay down every month, really the better. And so it really then, I think, is looking at where you can either cut things out, or where if you get bonuses, or you have better, basically with your like employment or something, then it's going to be adding that, anytime you have extra money, putting it towards that credit card. And that's what's really important, I think, about what I was saying of thinking about longer term, because if you're coming into the wedding and you have savings, like you were saying, like let's say you're coming in and you already have $50,000 saved, and you want the $100,000 wedding, so you only have $50,000 to save, that's great. And maybe stick with that. Don't go then for the $200,000, because if you're able to even save additionally, that's not towards the wedding, but towards some other aspects, like just general savings, you're just going to be setting yourself up for the future to be in a better spot. Like, because you have to think about, so that's what I think, like sitting down as a couple and saying, what do we want now? What do we want to do in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? So it's hard, I know, and that's it. Like some people say, I can't even think that far ahead, and that's what gets overwhelming. But even just having a few goals written down, like, maybe it's just like we know at some point we want to buy a house, or like I do want to be able to take vacations in the future, then that's when you don't want to use necessarily, you want to keep saving like a little bit all the time.
There's a common thread in all of these behind the bouquet, and it's honest and open communication.
Yeah, and that's true.
In every aspect of life. So if you don't know that, learn it here.
It's a good tip.
And it's so hard because everything is so beautiful. And to piggyback on before, like clients just don't know how much things cost. So like, a box plant, that's probably like $500.
Yeah.
And they think it should be $100, when in reality that's not what it costs. So you see these like Pinterest-worthy weddings where the flowers are dripping from the ceilings and all over, and that's like a $300,000 floral budget.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's beautiful, but it's
It's
crazy.
crazy. I think you're right. I think that the social media has made it like now we can see so much more, so then everybody wants that, so it's actually made it harder because you think it's reality when it's not necessarily going to be reality. So, I mean, there's probably ways which you were talking about, you know, educating clients on how, where to spend, what things cost, I think is really then important, and just, you know, I'm sure there's tricks where you can then make some aspects look more lush and beautiful, and then you can focus like pictures there, and then
corner.
Right.
Exactly. No, so it's always, a lot of it is a game of tricks too, like all the wedding photos, they're staged, the getting ready photos, but you know, they're still beautiful. It just takes time to get that perfect angle.
Right, so it takes, that's why it's important to have you then, because you can help orchestrate that.
I am very important.
It is. Well, I think that's really a good point though, because like there's the plan, I mean, I keep going back to the planning, and you're right about the communication, but that's where you can actually then help guide the discussions, especially if, you know, there's a couple who we find will have this, where, you know, partners just aren't on the same page, and they need, you know, they need to be, and it's going to actually have a lasting impact.
And a lot of times it's like a hard conversation to have, money. So it can either be embarrassing,
That's
like
true.
you're hiding something that you're not sure of, like you don't want to come out, but it all comes out. Or like, you know, things are too good. So if you're on the embarrassing end and your partner, it has it like too good, you're just like, crap.
Well, that's true, but it's actually but you have to have that open communication, and it's like the perfect time, because if you don't have that foundation from the beginning, then it's just going to be harder and harder over time. And I think that's why, you know, doing the planning together and making sure both people understand the budget and have the same vision is really important, because I strongly believe to have like success around money and creating wealth is both partners need to be involved from the beginning, because otherwise you end up and there's really like a disconnect. So I briefly shared with you, but I'll tell the story, is that so my husband and I both always would do, before we had kids, we always worked on like the finances together. Like we would split the bills, and he paid some and I paid some, and we knew what they were, and we would go over, you know, every quarter we would go over what we had saved, and we knew like, okay, when, like for our honeymoon, we knew it was like 12 months, and so every month we put aside, it was like $800, and it was very regimented, which if I didn't do this, then, you know, it would kind of be silly, right, for my profession. But there was, and I also have been married for 17 years, so that's why it was a long time ago. But anyways, there was, so things were definitely cheaper. But then once we had kids, everything just became more complicated. So we didn't have time, and it ended up where we weren't talking about everything, and it's really hard.
And the money just goes out so quickly.
It goes out, and that's what I'm saying. And you don't even have time to like budget, because it's just like you don't know where the bills are coming from, and they're just so expensive. Right, like the activity, everything. So
everything costs money. Everything.
Yeah, and so it was actually about 2 years ago, my husband started, he's not like totally freaking out, but he didn't think that we were saving any money, and he was like very concerned. He was like, we haven't saved anything in like 2 years. And I was like, no, we totally have. Like, look, it's all here, but it's just we hadn't sat down, and because I am the financial advisor, I have access to all of our accounts like very quickly. I look at them every day, where it takes, for him it's a little more cumbersome, and he doesn't have the logins, and we don't,
the password,
and we didn't sit down to look at everything anymore on like a quarterly basis. So we now have actually started doing that, where we sit down and then we meet, and I think it really is important to do that, and to understand then and look at what you are spending on a monthly basis, and making sure that there's money left over for everybody, because it doesn't have to be a detailed budget, because I think it's incredibly hard to do that, and a lot of times people create a budget that then they think that they're following, but they're not. So it's
Right.
much more important to see what you have spent, which, like, so if people are coming to and they've already done some planning, I would say it's important to see what they have already spent and then where they need to go. Exactly.
So this might tie into everything that you've just said, but is there any like kind language or ways for a couple that's coming to you or to me that has like a big discrepancy in salary? So if someone is making like a lot and then a little, how is there a way to like kind of kindly merge them, like to make sure that both of them feel that the money is theirs, or is everyone different, or does some like to keep it separate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think
And
that's
I'm probably not even wording it correctly.
no, but I know what you're saying, and it's really tough. I actually
Yeah.
had a client situation that was similar, that was really difficult because the wife was making less than the husband. She had taken a year off from work, like to stay home with the kids, and then when she went back to work, they agreed that she was going to have more flexible hours. She would then have less income, less salary. But he was trying to keep the paying for the expenses all even, but it really wasn't. It just wasn't feasible, because when you're making half of what somebody else does,
Right.
then obviously there's not as much to go towards things.
Yeah.
So it was awkward. You're right. And what I kept doing, because I felt like you're probably in the same situation. We feel uncomfortable saying like, well, you make more, so you should just pay more, right? Like you can't really say that. So I just kept having to have conversations, and what I said was, okay, so like, if every month there's $5,000 coming in, and your expenses are $3,000, like let's map out where the money's coming from, and then what's left over. And then once it was like visual, then he got it. Like, oh, okay, there's not any more for her on her side of the ledger, and I have this surplus. So, right, I can give you some money. So then, because she wanted to like take exercise classes and stuff, and she basically, so I think most people are very visual, so it ends up taking a little more time, because I've had to have like a couple more conversations, and then like get really granular, like put it on paper, but that's what I have found
Sometimes
to be
old school
successful.
pen and paper, like diagrams.
Exactly, no, yeah, because
Food, turkey.
this goes here,
Yes.
this goes here, yeah.
No, visual, icons definitely help.
Yeah. That's a great question.
And then, so you have this wedding, you stayed in budget, you followed all the financial rules, you get, and you get a ton of gifts, great gifts. So let's say you get 100,000, just because that's the number we're playing with today, 100,000 in gifts then.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing. So, what do you do with it? You're opening this money. I'm assuming some is cash, some is checks. Do you run to the bank? Do you put it under your mattress?
That's a good question. Well, I would definitely recommend that you put it at least in a savings account.
Okay.
And then you do need to do something with the money. So, I mean, even if there's high interest bearing savings accounts, so usually you need to have like at least 50,000, even some, I think it's more like 100,000 to get higher interest rates. But you can put the money into, it's basically like a certificate of deposit or an FDIC insured account where you'll get interest. So right now it's usually around like 2%, 2.5% maybe, for usually it's about 12 months. The money's very safe, but then it gives you options to figure out what you want to do with it. So I think it's a mistake to just run and like buy one stock or something, because you don't have a plan. I'm very into planning.
She's talking to me.
Because
Crazy Janine.
well, because you don't know
Or Chanel.
what you want to do. Right. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, figure out, have another conversation about what do we want to do. I think it's fine to take some of it and do something fun. Like most people have furniture they want to buy, or maybe you didn't go on a honeymoon, so now you can, but don't go, because I'm conservative, don't go on the $100,000 honeymoon, right?
Okay.
Because it'll be wonderful for 2 weeks, but then
you're back
into everything. So how can that money, because that would be a significant amount, even $50,000 is a significant amount of money. That could be a big chunk towards a down payment for like a condo, a co-op, a house, and
Right.
or maybe you don't know where you want to live and you're not ready to buy, but you could still use that money. That can be a great building block to then having savings for later on.
So you mentioned something about 12 months, so it has to sit in the bank for 12 months, or?
That's usually typically the minimum time period to get that interest rate. Yeah. So it doesn't have to. I mean, you could just put the money in a regular savings account just so it's available, and then you can decide. You can have time to plan around what you want to do.
So basically, get the gifts, talk to Carrie, and then
that would work too.
Yes. Okay. So you have this business that you've built with your partners. Do you have any tips for female business owners? Any obstacles you've overcome, or?
I think one of the biggest obstacles has always been building up self-confidence and also being articulate and finding my voice, meaning that there's, especially in financial services, it's a very heavily male-dominated industry, so really just continuing to remind myself that there's different opinions matter, and that sometimes, more different ideas actually create a better outcome then for, clients in a different perspective. So I think that's
really
the
important.
hardest. Yeah, I mean, it is.
And it's self-worth, and I've had to learn that as well, how to speak up or when not to speak up, and how to articulate is a big one. I really appreciate you saying that. Like, I understand it.
There's the other thing I think that gets, like, I feel like recently it hasn't been talked about so much, but certainly, so my daughter is 10, and when she was born, it was much more about like work-life balance, or maybe I was just more in tune to that. And my personal opinion is that isn't like the perfect scenario. It's always a give and take, and there's days when like I give more to work and to clients, but then there's other days that I give more to my kids, and in the end, everybody gets what they need, but it's never going to be this like perfect balance.
It's never a daily thing.
Yeah, and I think just knowing that, like even entering like a marriage, then knowing that the give and take needs to be somewhat flexible, and that it's going to change and shift is important too.
Anything to add on to that? Like maybe, if you're in the moment in something, just do it. Do it like.
Yes.
So, if you're like with your kids, like be with your kids.
Yeah.
But if you're at work, like, get that stuff done and do it well.
Exactly.
Like, and I think that's appropriate to when I send a proposal out, I've started to write this little like blurb underneath. Like, we don't want to waste your time. Like, what we do, like, takes a lot of like organizing and everything. So we'll relay the like important information to you. Let us create a timeline, and we just don't want to waste a minute of it because everything is so hustle and bustle now.
Yeah.
That, really just be in the moment. At your wedding, be in the moment.
Yes, it's so true. I mean, that was one of, the best advice, somebody that worked with my husband at the time right before our marriage, the day before, he said, just enjoy it. Like, don't worry about everything, and don't worry about anything, because you're the only one who planned it, so you know exactly what was supposed to happen, but nobody else will. So there will be a little problem. Yeah. And there was actually we're supposed to have like this party bus thing to take people.
They showed up with like a little.
They didn't. They showed up with like just a little limousine. So that did not work.
And Uber wasn't around then.
Uber was not around then. So yeah, my parents had to call and get like another car service so that was funny.
Something always does go wrong.
Yeah.
And if we're there, we're on the front line.
Right, so you would have done it. Instead my dad was like, when there weren't even like cell phones had just come out, so it was like, I think he had to go to a payphone.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, you all got there.
Yes, well exactly, like, yeah.
And, I'm sure you got some money back or for them
Yeah,
messing up, but
exactly.
just enjoy it, really. Like,
Right.
you know, it's not going to happen again.
Right, exactly. And it goes really fast that
Yeah.
day. So.
Anything else you want to share? This was really lovely.
It was. This was really fun. No, I don't think so. I don't
Awesome.
think so. So thank you for the opportunity.
Of
I've
course.
enjoyed it.
Thanks
It
for
was
coming
fun.
on. I know live we have a couple viewers and then people definitely watch it after.
Okay.
So I'm excited for them to learn
Yeah.
all the tips that I just learned. I should probably put into action. Just kidding. But thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure. I'm in New York City with Carrie Galloway. And definitely check out her firm, YorkBridge Wealth Partners. And, you know, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. I had to go turn it off this time.
I know.